In November 2021, 5 months after signing a letter calling for a complete investigation of the origins of the novel coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, Michael Worobey, a Canadian evolutionary biologist, and a professor and department head of ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of Arizona, had published an article in Science, in which he had advised that a way to step back to a period before any such bias could have crept in, by considering what happened in the hospitals that first pieced together that a new viral outbreak was underway, it might be a more prudent path to follow. And as a general rule, this is the procedure that is followed in the conduct of an investigation. So, your task, should you choose to accept this mission, is to examine the facts and consider the kind of actions and events that you can connect, and we shall commence right back on the beginning to determine if there is anything that looks abnormal on your screen. And remember to stay calm, cool and collected, guided by the facts, and not emotions, because potentially millions of lives are at stake. According to reports, the first known case had been identified at Wuhan Central Hospital on December 18, 2019, when Aifun, the director of the emergency department, had encountered her first unexplained pneumonia patient, a 65-year-old man who had become ill on either 13 or December 15, and who did not respond to antibiotics or anti-influenza drugs, and afflicted with infections in both lungs. It would later be determined that the patient was a delivery man at Wuhan market. It would not be until December 24, 6 days later, that a bronchoalveolar lavage specimen would be sent to Vision Medicals, a metagenomics sequencing company, where they had identified a new SARS-CoV on December 26 and had relayed the finding by telephone to the hospital on December 27. By December 28, Wuhan Central Hospital had identified 7 cases, of which 4 turned out to be linked to Wuhan market. Based upon just these initial facts, does this appear to be something rather routine? Do you have any questions? Do you notice anything unusual or out of the ordinary? Please take a note of your initial impressions, as we continue with the information briefing. According to media reports, events commenced on December 27, 2019, when Hubei Provincial Hospital of Integrated Chinese and Western Medicine had been the very first hospital to issue any alert notification to district, municipal, and provincial public health authorities about what had been observed as a mysterious pneumonia cases. Zhang Jixian, who had been employed as the Director of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine, had reported observing what had appeared to have been large, ground glass opacities in computed tomography, or CT images of the lungs of an elderly couple. Based upon just these initial facts, does this appear to be something rather routine? Do you have any questions? Do you notice anything unusual or out of the ordinary? Please take a note of your initial impressions, as we continue with the information briefing. For your information, in cases of COVID-19, where there is lung involvement, such as in cases of even mild pneumonia, the worst case for approximately 80% of those who had been diagnosed with laboratory-confirmed cases in China by February 20, 2020, within the first 5 days of illness, a chest CT will reveal these ground glass opacities, or GGOs, peaking at around day 10 in acute cases. These opacities will present in a peribronchovascular distribution, i.e., distributed across the connective tissue sheath that encloses the bronchi, pulmonary arteries, and lymphatic vessels, or in a nodular distribution, which, in CT imaging has been identified as the most important factor in making an accurate diagnosis, and may involve a centrolobular distribution, which, as it sounds, concerns a pattern affecting lobules in the lungs, or in a random distribution, which refers to no preference for a specific location in the secondary lobule, and where present, this is a rapidly developing condition that, in COVID-19, have presented findings of air bronchograms, or air-filled bronchi, as well as dilated arteries, which could be a marker of the coagulopathy, or bleeding disorders in the majority of patients, and, hence, very serious. Similar opacities have been associated with both SARS and MERS, but, in COVID-19, their presentation is quite distinct, marked particularly by the presence of a reversed halo appearance, which would have been sufficient to identify what may have appeared to have been a new type of coronavirus infection, contributing to this novel case of pneumonia. Based upon just these additional facts, does this appear to be something rather routine? Do you have any questions? Do you notice anything unusual or out of the ordinary? Please take a note of your initial impressions as we continue with the information briefing. After examination of the CT images from the elderly couple, Dr. Zhang then had insisted that the couple's son, who was not a patient being treated, and who had exhibited no symptoms or signs of disease, undergo a CT scan, and, apparently, what may have been a hunch, apparently he had observed the same unusual lesions were observed. Neither the son, nor his parents had any connection with the wet market, and they have been identified as the first cases involving what has been identified as lineage A of the virus in Wuhan. Based upon just these additional facts, does this appear to be something rather routine? Do you have any questions? Do you notice anything unusual or out of the ordinary? Please take a note of your initial impressions as we continue with the information briefing. According to reports, an additional patient, presenting with a similar CT imaging, a worker at 1N Market, who had also been admitted on December 27, and Dr. Zhang, having become concerned about a new disease, had reported a total of 4 cases to hospital officials, who alerted the Gyeonghan District CDC that same day. However, at this point, there were no reported fatalities, and no evidence, beyond the presence of the opacities in the elderly couple and their son, to confirm the presence of an infectious virus. According to Dr. Worobey's account, over the 28th and the 29th of December, 3 more patients, all of whom worked at 1N Market, were admitted and recognized to have the same unknown respiratory disease. A team of then experts from the hospital were convened for an emergency meeting by Xiao Wenwang, including Zhang, on December 29th, and they concluded that the situation was extraordinary. A total then of only 7 cases. Upon learning of similar patients, also linked to 1N Market, at Tongji and Union, Xiehe, hospitals, Xiao alerted the Wuhan and Hubei CDCs on December 29th, which would be a total of only 27 cases by December 31st in China, again, with no reported fatalities, and no evidence, beyond the presence of the opacities in the elderly couple and their son, to confirm the presence of an infectious virus. Based upon just these additional facts, does this appear to be something rather routine? Do you have any questions? Do you notice anything unusual or out of the ordinary? Please take a note of your initial impressions, because this is the information that had been available before health officials in China had decided to contact the WHO, and they, in turn, had, on January 1, 2020, stood up the Incident Management Support Team, or IMST, putting the organization on an emergency footing for dealing with the outbreak. This concludes this leadership assessment simulation, and you shall be contacted with the results. Thanks for your participation. That is all. Carry on.
This message was approved by Major Mike Webb. Honest.